Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are about to start the opening session. Would request all of you to please take your seats. So once again, good morning to all of you. Welcome to the Regional Connectivity Conference. The timing of this conference could not have been more apt. There is a revived interest in the potential of South Asia as a region in the context of the Indo-Pacific, and that holds immense political, social, and economic significance. Just in economic terms, the World Bank estimates that removing barriers and streamlining customs procedures would nearly increase inter-regional trade from $19 billion to approximately $62 billion in South Asia alone. And that's a huge potential which I'm sure all of us would have to work together to achieve. One can well imagine the potential and the promise that an integrated South and Southeast Asia can offer. In December 2016, when we first organized the Indo-Asia Connectivity for Shared Prosperity Conference in Kolkata, the stage was set for continued collaboration in regional connectivity. Today, as we gather here in Delhi, almost 2 years later, we are glad to note the positive movements towards South Asia regional connectivity. We have approximately 300 representatives from academia, think tanks, multilateral institutions, and various national governments in the room today. This is an indication of the importance and the need of regional connectivity in South Asia. Given this background, it's my honor and privilege for me to invite the distinguished speakers for the opening plenary, Indo-Pacific Picture. I would like to invite Mr. Pradeep Mehta, Mr. Satu Limaye, Mr. Vikramjit Sahney, our partners for this conference, Ambassador Kenji Hiramatsu, Ambassador Kenneth Juster, and Mr. Vijay Gokhale. With this, I request Mr. Mehta to take over the proceedings and deliver the inaugural address. Thank you very much.
Uday Mehta, and welcome you all to this conference. Very delighted that in Delhi so early in the day, most of you come, and as Uday spoke, it shows the importance and the confidence that you have in the issue that we are going to discuss over these next 2 days. I'm particularly pleased to welcome our honored guests sitting on the dais, Foreign Secretary Vijay Gokhale, US Ambassador Kenneth Juster, Japanese Ambassador Kenji Hiramatsu, Mr. Vikramjit Sahney, representing FICCI, and our friend and partner Satu Limaye from the East-West Center. We are very pleased to have this conference, which is a continuing affair supported by the US government, for which we are very thankful. And we are also very thankful to FICCI, as well as East-West Center, for having partnered with us in this particular initiative, which shows the confidence of business, particularly in the issue that we are going to discuss and the kind of prosperity, if further partnerships or further exploration would help to bring about in the region. 2 years ago, when I spoke in Kolkata under the aegis of a similar initiative, which Uday Mehta referred to in his opening remarks, policy experts were still grappling with the construct called the Indo-Pacific. In the meantime, while greater clarity has emerged on this concept, it needs to be translated on the ground. In a recent statement, the US Deputy Assistant Secretary for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, Alex Wong, stated that the term Indo-Pacific acknowledges the historical and the current reality that South Asia, and in particular India, plays a key role in the Pacific and in East and Southeast Asia. That said, the construct requires fuller meaning only when three key modifiers, free, open, and inclusive, are added to it. The idea of a free and open Indo-Pacific was unveiled by President Trump during his address at the APEC conference in Vietnam last year, while the word inclusive was added to by Prime Minister Modi in his address at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore in June of this year. What this indicates is that both the US and India recognize the growing importance of Indo-Pacific as a region where global fulcrum of power is shifting, and therefore India's emphasis on the word inclusive is an attempt to bring greater coherence between the efforts of the two countries vis-à-vis the whole region as they move ahead. This coherence can be built by relying more on the economic and political understanding of Indo-Pacific rather than merely on its security dimension. This is because, if seen purely from military or security perspective, the Indo-Pacific connotation excludes parts of South Asia that lie to India's west, but from economic and political standpoints, these areas are critical to the definition and character of South Asia. Therefore, greater coherence and convergence can be built only by looking at broader economic and political realities of the region. Now, before I move ahead, let me very briefly refer to two recent speeches made by two senior American diplomats on different occasions. First, I refer to Mr. Wong's press statement, from which I have already quoted a little while ago. In that statement, Mr. Wong also spelled out the necessary contours of a free and open Indo-Pacific, which entails open sea lines of communication, open airways, open logistics, open infrastructure, open investment, open trade, and transparent regulatory infrastructure, amongst others. Secondly, I would like to quote the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary, Ambassador Alice Wells, while speaking at a recently held Indian Ocean conference in Sri Lanka, spelled out specific steps being undertaken by the US government in the Indian Ocean region, chief among them being supporting private sector opportunities, development finance, regional connectivity, and steps to improve the overall business climate in the region. And I'm very happy to say, as of today, what we read in the newspapers, that India has improved its ranking on the ease of doing business by 23 places. So that's a big compliment, Secretary Gokhale, to the Government of India, which we would like to convey from our conference. These statements and steps, which I referred to from the two American diplomats, are concrete evidence of wider recognition of what needs to be done to make South and Southeast Asian region more connected, competitive, and resilient. I'm happy to state that the agenda of this conference will not only look at these issues, but also beyond. Therefore, our endeavor is to turn this event into a sincere and honest attempt to add to the mutual efforts of the two countries by creating a multidisciplinary, multi-country platform for action-oriented policy dialogues by collecting policymakers, private sector, think tanks, experts, and trade and investment promotion bodies, to just name a few. Here I would like to add that discussions on digital economy, infrastructure, and energy, the three new initiatives designed to better position the US government to support private sector growth in the region, are also well covered in the agenda for this conference. That said, I would now like to go back to the point about creating a greater coherence between the efforts of India and the United States in the Indo-Pacific region. We think that the operative words, that is free, open, and inclusive, will determine the extent of coherence. Presently, while both countries are moving in the same direction, the level of priority or the degree of importance attached to some specifics might be different due to distinct and perceived national interest, which is natural. It happens in all such situations. For instance, India's emphasis on an inclusive Indo-Pacific stems from her geographic reality and economic considerations manifested in that reality. Therefore, a right policy will be to eschew conflicts, agree to disagree where it is required, and build collaboration while striving towards lasting cooperation. Related to the point about geographical significance is how India sees the ambit of Indo-Pacific. For India, it is not just from the west coast of India to the west coast of the US, but also extends to parts of Africa, eastern and southern, which are touched by the waters of the Indian Ocean. It is in this context that new initiatives like Asia-Africa Growth Corridor conceived by India and Japan are extremely relevant. Not only does this initiative seek to marry India's Act East policy with free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific, but also seeks to bring out economic gains for Africa through its integration with India, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and the East Asia and the Pacific region. In other words, it is also a roadmap for creating new channels for the production of goods, services, and technologies, and for connecting institutions and people in Asia and Africa for greater prosperity. Therefore, I hope that the US will also begin to recognize a wider Indo-Pacific, which in fact will be its true remit, as a domain of greater collaboration and cooperation, and just with India, not just with India, but also with other partners in the region. Lastly, I wish to say that 2 years ago, I announced in my address in Kolkata that it is our firm belief that Washington, D.C. will continue to play a strategic role in world affairs generally and the Indo-Pacific region specifically. Therefore, the presence of a pro-trade, pro-equity Southern voice in Washington, D.C. is an imperative. Today, I'm happy to say that CUTS International has launched its 6th overseas center in Washington, D.C. in April 2018. With that, CUTS has become the first Indian think tank to have presence in the US. For that matter, this has come about because of the emerging need for greater collaboration on multiple fronts, not only between India and the US, but also between and among a larger group of players in the Indo-Pacific region. Just the other day, at the US-India US ISPF, United States and India Strategic Partnership Forum, Minister for Trade India, Suresh Prabhu, made a very profound remark in the sense that the collaboration between the two countries should extend not only between the governments, but private sector as well as civil society. And that sounded in line with what we have been doing. Let me also say that with our presence and demonstrated experience in Asia, Africa, Europe, and now in the US, we will be ever willing to aid the efforts of our respective governments, industry, and citizens to achieve the objectives of greater regional integration and interregional or intercontinental cooperation. To sum up, while the contrast of Indo-Pacific starts with a geographical definition, it also includes political and economic dimensions of countries that it envelops. India's centrality in this architecture is well recognized, and with it comes the importance of India's connectivity initiatives on its own as well as in cooperation with other partners in its immediate and extended neighborhood. Therefore, as we move ahead, we hope that a better understanding evolves on this dynamic construct for Indo-Pacific, which is not cast in stone. We hope that it does truly become a fulcrum to foster global stability and prosperity. With that, I would like to thank you all for your kind attention and wish you an exhilarating and fruitful 2 days of deliberations. And we hope, as I said, that this conference, like the last one, would result in a forward-looking agenda and not stop at being another event. Thank you very much. May I now request our partner Satu Limaye, whichever, what is convenient to you. Easier to read. Thanks.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and Foreign Secretary Gokhale, Ambassador Juster, Ambassador Hiramatsu, and Mr. Sahney, as well as distinguished participants. It's a pleasure for me to be here at this South Asia and the Indo-Pacific Connectivity Regional Conference. As Mr. Mehta mentioned, the East-West Center has been working with, of course, our consulates in India and the Department of State and the Embassy in Delhi, as well as other partners on this ongoing effort to look at creative and concrete solutions for regional connectivity in South Asia and the Indo-Pacific. As Mr. Mehta said, my name is Satu Limaye, and for this conference I represent the East-West Center, and really looking forward to the suggestions that we come up with in the next 2 days. Let me just say that the East-West Center is a congressionally established organization working on education, exchange, and research across the region, all the way originally in our charter from Iran East, and these days from South Asia East. And the center is itself in the business of connectivity, connecting people and ideas to action for improving a shared, peaceful, and prosperous Indo-Pacific future. In my judgment, the Indo-Pacific's economic dynamism is built on a combination of a couple of things. First, domestic economic reform and business climate improvements, as was announced earlier today, the rise of India 23 points in the World Bank Ease of Doing Business Index. But it's also built on trade, investment, and infrastructure integration and connectivity. This Indo-Pacific economic dynamism is now creating its own robust and spreading internationalization. New links, new convergences are developing from the Sea of Japan to the Arabian Sea. Look East, Look West, and Look South policies are driven by the national interests of Indo-Pacific countries, are creating precisely these new opportunities for regional connectivity. Amidst the vast Indo-Pacific expanse, the Indian Ocean South Asia quadrant is relatively underconnected and therefore unable to fully harness the benefits of trade, investment, and infrastructure for improving the lives of its citizens. A recent World Bank report captured the situation in its title, "A Glass Half Full, but with Promise." Fortunately, as Mr. Mehta alluded to, stirrings in South Asia, especially in the eastern and southern part of the region, are opening new opportunities. Multi-country initiatives such as BBIN and BIMSTEC hold promise for greater regional connectivity. So too do bilateral links such as those between Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka with India. Beyond South Asia, as Indo-Pacific economic dynamism spreads, countries large and small are pursuing and supporting connectivity. There is no single tool, no single formula through which Indo-Pacific commercial and infrastructure connectivity will be developed. Indeed, some of these tools are being shared amongst and across countries or held by more than one hand. Region-wide strategic efforts, of course, include the Belt and Road Initiative, the Partnership for Quality Infrastructure Initiative of Japan, the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor, and the US's most recent contribution, the Better Utilization of Investment for Development, or the BUILD Act, to name just a few. Singapore last week, or very recently, announced a new Infrastructure Asia agency. While the tools and approaches for connectivity may be diverse, there is no denying that a fundamental need is for a strong, rules-based, institutions-based approach that respects sovereignty and future sustainability. My own country, the United States, has long been part of this Indo-Pacific commercial connectivity via its important roles not only in direct bilateral trade and investment, but in the production and supply chains that have been integral to the development and prosperity of the region and the US. Just to cite a couple of examples from our Asia Matters for America report, 30% of our US goods and services have the Indo-Pacific as their destination. 3 million US jobs are supported by exports to and investment from the region. In California alone, that's 300,000 jobs in the state, an increase of 125,000 jobs in the last 5 years. 30 US states now have Indo-Pacific countries amongst their top 5 destinations for trade and investment. $90 billion to the US economy comes from visitors from this region, and $25 billion from its students. These are growing most prominently and significantly with India, which across all of these areas of trade, investment, students, tourism, is becoming an increasingly important integrative factor in the wide Indo-Pacific region. It is only natural, therefore, that the US has an interest in and contribution to supporting the integration of India in the Indo-Pacific and our own increase in engagement. Moreover, for the United States, the Indo-Pacific concept itself has been an enduring feature. And in fact, the name change from Pacific Command to Indo-Pacific Command, where I used to work, reflects labels catching up to long-running reality of how we organize part of our engagement with the region. Now, through Build Act and other initiatives that Ambassador Juster and many of our officials that Mr. Mehta cited have spoken about, we're expanding this in economic and infrastructure, energy, and other ways of integrating. Indo-Pacific connectivity cooperation can and does coexist with competition and even distrust. Complete confidence or unverified trust is not a prerequisite for pursuing commercial and infrastructure connectivity. Countries in the Indo-Pacific have shown flexibility and creativity in overcoming perceptual, political, protectionist, and policy gaps. In particular, East Asia, part of the Indo-Pacific, has exhibited faster economic integration than political integration. The lesson for me, anyway, is that the lack of progress on political relations need not inhibit or imperil commercial cooperation. It is in this spirit of Indo-Pacific dynamism, deep US interests and commitments to India, South Asia, and the wider region, and the East-West Center's own project of connectivity, that I welcome this conference and our participation, and I look forward to the discussions over the next 2 days, and more importantly, the outcomes to follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Satu. I now request Mr. Sahney for your address.
Shri Vijay Gokhale ji, Foreign Secretary, Government of India, His Excellency Mr. Kenneth Juster, Ambassador of the United States to the Republic of India, His Excellency Mr. Kenji Hiramatsu, Ambassador of Japan to the Republic of India, Mr. Mehta, Secretary General of CUTS International, Mr. Satu Limaye, Director, East-West Center, Mr. Manish Singhal, DG from FICCI, other key dignitaries from South Asia and Indo-Pacific foreign missions, leading think tank experts, our friends from industry and media, very good morning to all of you. I'm really honored to be a part of this first South Asia Regional Connectivity Conference, which has kick-started today in Delhi. In fact, it is a privilege to address such an august gathering of dignitaries, thought leaders and leading members of the industry. To begin with, on behalf of FICCI, I would like to take this opportunity to thank CUTS International, and we really appreciate the proactive role of US Department for their interest in building a very vibrant South Asia. Being the chair of SAARC-CCI for over a decade now, my engagement with South Asia has been also very long, and I feel that this international conference holds significance in today's changing time. As all of us know, South Asia region is one of the fastest growing regions with 6.8% economic growth of the region. Moreover, region can also boast of the growing trade and investment potential, considering the countries in the region are geographically well placed and have immense natural resources, and there is unleashed potential to exploit them. At the same time, region is home to over 1.5 billion population of emerging young demographics, which has the potential to yield a profitable demographic dividend. But in spite of such dynamic macroeconomic fundamentals of the region, intra-regional trade in South Asia continues to linger between 5 to 6% of the total trade, and more so the trade-related infrastructure in sectors like energy, transport is lacking, and limited transport connectivity, logistics, regulatory impediment cost more to trade within South Asia than interregionally. Although we did a lot of work for opening checkposts and improve connectivity on the motor vehicle agreement, railways, but still and also on the harmonization of codes between South Asian countries. But the global estimates still suggests the average cost of trade within South Asia are 20% higher, the transaction cost compared to other regions. We must highlight that the few initiatives which India have taken and spearheaded is the BBIN initiative with sub-regional countries, which led to the signing of motor vehicular agreement for enhanced engagement and connectivity between India, Bangladesh, Bhutan and Nepal. And effective implementation of this motor vehicular agreement shall promote containerization of cargo movement within region by allowing vehicles from BBIN countries to enter each other's territory. And this multimodal transport connectivity shall definitely reduce the trade costs. And we also do hope that the long pending motor vehicular agreement between South Asia will also be ratified, enhancing the trade between India and Afghanistan. Although India has started the connectivity with Afghanistan when the president of Afghanistan was here, and I was fortunate to be in that session. So we have started the trade by air, and Afghanistan air cargo route linking Kabul with Delhi to Mumbai has led to phenomenal increase in total value of exports, but still motor vehicle agreement is an impediment. Coming to the ports, India has also unveiled a major plan to connect its northeast with Bangladesh Chittagong port. Through Chittagong port, the entire northeastern region can be connected through ocean trade. And I feel the recent signing of milestone agreements by the Government of India on enhancing inland and coastal waterways between India and Bangladesh, whether it is Chattogram and Mongla ports, including the signing of standing operating procedure over the movement of passenger and cruise services between Kolkata, Dhaka, Guwahati, Jorhat and back, and protocol on inland water transit and trade, and Sirjaganj, Dayakova stretches of Indo-Bangladesh protocol route, apart from, of course, the road routes. This is expected to facilitate easier movement of goods and passengers between the countries. India had also announced the upgradation of road and cross-border rail and energy links with Nepal, and develop inland waterways to provide sea connectivity to the various South Asian countries which are landlocked. Similarly, with Bhutan, India is conducting feasibility studies to enhance the rail connectivity. I'm positive that these initiatives and the 2 days deliberations in this conference will provide a major boost to connectivity in the region and will also enhance the outreach and access and unleashing the potential of South Asia. The industry will have better access to markets of South and East Asia, and we can have substitution of fossil fuels by cleaner hydropower from Nepal and Bhutan, contributing to the greener environment. Connectivity in turn not only enhances trade, but increases productivity, innovation, employment opportunities, and boosts tourism within South Asia, because we have shared history and culture. And people-to-people contact, which we have been working for last decade, is very important. And I must say that we at FICCI, with the support of MEA and predecessors of Mr. Gokhale, we organized first ever South Asia Trade Ministers conference in Delhi, and we organized events of connectivity and enhancing people-to-people contact in each and every South Asian country, and we were supported and received by not less than head of state, whether it was Maldives, whether it was Sri Lanka, and it always helps to, which we call track 2 diplomacy, in bringing the South Asian countries in the backdrop of the quasi political environment which we are passing through. I think flight connectivity, the air connectivity, is also missing between the various capitals of South Asia, which we have to improve. India have a free now air policy, and we have various policy scheme in the region like Udan and other. So I think this connectivity in the all sectors will step up people-to-people contact. And last but not least, India was the first country who, at our behest, at our persuasion, our government issued more than 1,000 South Asian, which we used to call SAARC visa exemption sticker, were issued to bona fide businessmen. And the other South Asian countries also reciprocated the same as for the free movement of genuine bona fide business people to improve the connectivity. At the end, I would say that we have inherited this land from our ancestors, and it is our moral obligation to give back to our younger generation in a much better form. And let's build a peaceful and prosperous South Asia with better and enhanced connectivity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Sahney. May I now request Ambassador Hiramatsu? Thank you.
Mr. Pradeep Mehta, Secretary General CATS International, Mr. Satu Limaye, Director East-West Center, Mr. Vikramjit Singh Sahney, Senior National Executive Member of FICCI, Ambassador Kenji of the United States, Mr. Vijay Gokhale, Foreign Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by thanking CATS International, East-West Center, FICCI, and Government of the United States, and all the rest for organizing this wonderful conference. I'm particularly pleased to share this podium with my good friends, Ambassador Kenji and Foreign Secretary Gokhale, and delve ourselves into discussion on the topic of the day, regional connectivity. I'm fresh out of another successful Japan-India summit meeting and have returned to Delhi about 9 hours ago. But hearing the theme of this conference, I could not keep myself away. It is my pleasure to report to you that our 2 leaders had another truly substantial summit. Connectivity, I would say strategic connectivity, and Japan-India cooperation in the Pacific were themes high on the agenda. It was in 2016 when Prime Minister Abe first espoused the vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific at the TICAD 6 in Kenya, an international conference on Africa. This is an innovative vision which has transformed how we view the world. Until then, we have tended to look at Asia serving as the world's growth center and Africa endowed with huge potential as two separate and connected entities, but I'd like you to imagine a world map. Through the confluence of the Pacific and Indian Oceans, stretching from the Asian Pacific to Africa, you can now visualize the strong currents of peace, stability, and prosperity we can unleash. And I'm fortunate to be right in the middle of this conference, serving India, which is literally located at the heart of the Indo-Pacific region. So let me come back to how Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Abe have advanced this agenda. India and Japan have been intensifying their discussions on how they can contribute to a free, open, and prosperous Indo-Pacific. Already, last year, two prime ministers had affirmed that Japan and India shall align their efforts on Act East policy and towards a free and open Indo-Pacific. They had further confirmed that connectivity infrastructure should be developed and used in an open, transparent, and non-exclusive manner based on international standards and responsible debt financing practices. In essence, they affirm the need for quality infrastructure. And I'm pleased to learn that this conference will further deepen discussions focusing on these points later today. This year, our two leaders raised the level of our coordination a notch higher. The level of convergence on the Pacific region have been converging every time they meet. They reiterate their unwavering commitment to working together towards a free and open Indo-Pacific. Based on the shared vision, Japan and India have agreed to cooperate on specific projects contributing to better connectivity in the region. For example, in Bangladesh, India will construct roads while Japan will provide bridges to better connect them. Japan will construct the Jamuna Railway Bridge, on which rolling stocks provided by India will run. In Myanmar, we will cooperate in the Rakhine State by aligning our housing, school, and electricity projects. In Sri Lanka, Japan and India are closely cooperating with Sri Lanka for the development of energy-related infrastructure. Connectivity is not only about infrastructure. People's connectivity should be enhanced too. The Japan-India Connectivity Project also addresses development needs of Africa. It was not a coincidence that Prime Minister Abe's free and open Indo-Pacific vision was announced in the African continent. In Kenya, India and Japan will cooperate to develop hospitals for cancer treatment and continue our collaborative efforts to support small and medium enterprises. Speaking of business, our two countries will work toward establishing an India-Japan business platform to enhance exchanges between businesses, to develop industrial corridors and network in the region, including Africa. I must here add that not only bilateral, but also trilateral partnership plays a crucial role. Notably, Japan, India, and the United States are engaging themselves in how we can move forward on a promising road of better connectivity. The trilateral conversation has now turned into operative discussion on concrete projects. Japan will also continue to cooperate with India in developing its Northeast region. For that purpose, we have established the Japan-India Arctic Forum last year, in which Foreign Secretary Gokhale and I served as the co-chairs. Japan's commitment to the Northeast is rooted in history, going back to the time of World War II. I frequently visit the region to pay homage to the war victims and to build lasting friendship. I am pleased to return to the Northeast the week after next, meeting good friends including Mr. Sangma, Chief Minister of Meghalaya, and Mr. Sonowal, Chief Minister of Assam. This will be my 7th visit to the region in less than 3 years. India's Northeast is full of promise. It bears the possibility to be a gateway to Southeast Asia, Bhutan, and beyond. With that in mind, our two prime ministers welcome the progress made in the Arctic Forum. Japan will work in tandem with the Indian counterparts on the construction of roads and the bridge among other infrastructure projects. For example, on the occasion Prime Minister Modi's visit to Japan, exchange of notes was made on a huge bridge project across Brahmaputra River, linking Dhuburi in Assam with Puru Valley in Meghalaya. Indeed, this will be the longest bridge in India, let alone northeast, shortening the journey from lengthy over 8 hours to more than 20 minutes. This bridge will be an important part of Garef, Assam-Bhutan border, and Dalu, Meghalaya and Bangladesh border corridor project, which we decided to pursue to realize together with ADB in the last Act East Forum. These quality infrastructures will improve the connectivity within the Northeast region, as well as with their neighboring countries. A good example is National Highway 40 in Meghalaya, which Japan assists to improve. This highway will bring Shillong, state capital of Meghalaya, to be directly connected to Dhaka, Bangladesh, and further through other cross-border connectivity projects of Japan to Kolkata of India and Teknaf of Myanmar. These really exemplify our efforts for enhanced connectivity in action. As I said, people-to-people connectivity is another key. Japan and India are now collaborating on aligning their respective healthcare processes. I see a great potential for nurses and caregivers of Northeast region to come to Japan to build their skills under technical intern training programs. So this is another area we like to pursue together with more and more people-to-people and cultural exchanges. Japan will also contribute to disaster and forest management programs in the region. At the summit meeting, the two leaders also confirmed their cooperation to improve the domestic connectivity in India. As you know, Japan is cooperating with India on the Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed railways, which could dramatically shorten the journey from 7 hours to 2 hours. This large-scale project would not only transform railway system of India, but also its socio-economic dynamism. We are cooperating on metros in various cities, including Delhi Metro, which some of you might have used today to come to this venue. I am pleased to report that Delhi Metro has just made a further extension with the assistance of Japan, opening another 17.9 kilometers in Pink Line yesterday. Importantly, Japan is contributing to Skill India and Make India through these projects. Why are these cooperation projects significant? Connectivity is ultimately about our people's future and bringing them closer. It will facilitate free movement of people and goods, creating a new and better value chain. You will trade with and get to know different people. You will visit different places and learn about their history and cultures. Better connectivity will lead us to prosperity, stability, and ultimately peace. To conclude, I hope you'll have a fruitful discussion on this promising subject. My best wishes for a successful conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Hiramatsu. May I now request Ambassador Justin?
Thank you very much. Foreign Secretary Gokhale, Ambassador Hiramatsu, Messrs. Mehta, Limaye, and Sahney, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us at this important conference on regional connectivity. Thanks as well to CUTS, FICCI, and the East-West Center for their hard work in organizing today's event. As we know, the global economy has grown exponentially over the last few decades, driven by technological changes in transportation, communications, and finance, among others. We see the enormous impact that flows of people, capital, goods, services, and data have on our welfare and prosperity, and even on our security. Connectivity has thus become a central feature of our life and the backbone of our economies. Of course, connectivity can mean many things. Fundamentally, we may wish to think of it as making connections among people, companies, organizations, states, and countries. It means making sure that borders are not barriers. We can facilitate these connections by developing infrastructure for transportation by land, sea, and air, for trade and investment, for telecommunications and the flow of data, for financial flows, and for the sharing of resources, including energy and water. While we recognize that connectivity can bring great benefits, we also must acknowledge that it carries significant risks. Such risks include illicit trade, political interference, unsustainable debt arrangements, vulnerability to cyber attacks, and the spread of environmental pollution and disease. That is why increased connectivity must be managed effectively and with transparency among stakeholders, with agreed-upon technical and behavioral standards, and with responsible governance. What is remarkable about South Asia is that it is one of the fastest-growing regions in the world and home to nearly 1/4 of the planet's population, yet it remains, by almost any measure, one of the least connected regions. This conference is an important effort among all of us as part of the process of changing that situation, to enhance sustainable connectivity throughout South Asia in a positive way that promotes economic development and serves the needs of the people. This is consistent with the vision that the United States and other like-minded countries have for South Asia and the broader Indo-Pacific region, an inclusive vision of a free, open, and rules-based region with respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity that promotes connectivity through private sector-led growth, free and fair trade, the use of responsible debt financing practices, and the transparent development of infrastructure. I would like to briefly highlight some of the work that the United States has done related to the connectivity in the South Asia region. I might add that I was quite impressed by the range of activities that Japan has done and is doing in conjunction with India. Let me note at the outset that no government alone has the resources to meet all of South Asia's infrastructure needs, whether it be for highways, railroads, inland waterways, bridges, seaports, airports, logistics facilities, or electricity. Only with the support of the private sector can we mobilize the resources necessary for such needs over the next decade and beyond. American companies are playing a significant role in building connectivity in South Asia, from GE providing generators for power plants to Baltimore-based Ellicott dredges supplying the machines that keep inland waterways navigable and enable commerce within and between countries, including between India and Bangladesh. The U.S. government is also playing a critical role. We promote people-to-people interaction through our educational and cultural exchanges, and the work of our health agencies with local authorities in Northeast India to address HIV/AIDS, cancer detection, and malaria. In aviation, we are partnering with companies and the government of India to improve safety, security, and standards harmonization. At Chennai International Airport, the U.S. Trade and Development Agency is helping to enhance air navigation and connectivity. This initiative will enable the Airport Authority of India to handle growing capacity demands with new air traffic management techniques and safety measures. Maritime connectivity is equally important. That is why the U.S. Department of Commerce is sponsoring a series of training courses focused on ports and inland waterways in South Asia under the Special American Business Internship Training Program. In citing this program, port operators at Bangladesh's inland Pengao port near Dhaka developed a new incentive structure to increase shipment volumes. And the energy sector provides numerous examples of the work that we can do to advance our connectivity goals. This is particularly evident in India's northeast, an area that I recently visited. For India, regional connectivity provides a pathway for meeting the power needs of its northeastern states, a region that is difficult to service due to its geography. While India remains the electricity source for these states, with regional connectivity, it can utilize transmission infrastructure in Bangladesh to expand power access, improve reliability, and lower pricing in remote areas. Similarly, Bangladesh can save millions of dollars annually by importing power from India that is lower in cost than the fuel it would require to generate power internally. While visiting the state of Tripura in northeast India, I saw this potential firsthand at the power plant in Agartala, which uses natural gas from Tripura to produce electricity for the region. The people of the state receive clean energy, and surplus generation is exported across the border into Bangladesh, so both countries benefit. The plant's generators and other equipment were manufactured by General Electric. Thanks to an agreement between India and Bangladesh, GE was able to transport the turbines and other heavy materials via Bangladesh's inland waterways, thus saving enormous time and cost in the transportation process. Recognizing these benefits of energy cooperation, countries in the region have formalized their efforts through the South Asia Association for Regional Cooperation's Framework Agreement for Energy Cooperation and the Power Trade Agreement between India and Nepal. These agreements lay the foundation for a regional power market in South Asia. The U.S. government strongly supports broad partnerships such as these for a more prosperous and stable region. To facilitate efforts toward a regional energy market, the U.S. Agency for International Development works with the 8 South Asian countries: Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka under its South Asia Regional Initiative program. Since 2000, this initiative has helped create an enabling environment for regional energy cooperation through technical assistance and analytical studies, peer exchanges, consensus building, and conferences such as the one we are having here today. That spirit of partnership is also seen in the Millennium Challenge Corporation's $500 million compact with Nepal. This compact, signed in September 2017, will help to expand Nepal's road network and electricity infrastructure. It includes a $130 million investment from the government of Nepal, bringing the total value of this joint venture to $630 million. Digital connectivity is another area in which South Asia can thrive. New information and communications technologies provide a different way to cross borders, not by traveling in person, but by exchanging ideas and working together over distance in real time. The free flow of information across borders via the internet drives productivity, it drives growth, and it drives innovation. For that reason, we urge India and other countries to be cautious in enacting data localization and data privacy legislation, which certainly can address legitimate policy concerns, but if not done carefully and with the involvement of all stakeholders, can also unnecessarily restrict data flows, impose burdensome regulations, and disrupt connectivity. Indeed, that is why governance is such an important issue with regard to connectivity. In developing harmonious regulatory regimes, taking into account governmental and private sector concerns, and aligning overall governance objectives, we can facilitate economic relations and enhance prosperity. We can also reduce frictions at national borders so as to ensure the free flow of people, increase our trade in goods and services, and keep communications, data, and information flowing throughout the region. In sum, whether we focus on trade in goods and services, the development of infrastructure and energy systems, or the movement of people and data, the United States is committed to working with all of our partners to create a strong, prosperous, and interconnected South Asian and broader Indo-Pacific region. I wish you all the best for a very successful conference, and we'll look forward to hearing your recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. And now request Foreign Secretary Shri Vijay Gokhale to kindly address the gathering. Thank you.
Shri Mehta, Ambassadors Juster and Hiramatsu, Mr. Sahney, Mr. Limaye, ladies and gentlemen, I am very privileged to be here to share some thoughts on the subject of regional connectivity, and I applaud the US State Department's initiative to organize this second regional connectivity conference in India in a span of 2 years. For us, the subject of connectivity has very deep-rooted historical associations and enormous contemporary policy relevance. Robust connectivity has been the boon and barometer of India's prosperity and well-being through history, and our culture has been enriched by ancient linkages with the rest of the world. In the modern age, of course, the correlation between connectivity and economic growth has got even more pronounced. Growth in trade, commerce, industrial development, and technological advancement goes hand in hand with the ease of connecting. Unfortunately, the perverse logic of colonial geography and the Cold War promoted fragmentation and artificial barriers to connectivity that hampered against our natural outward-oriented reach. Since the end of the Cold War, if the first 2 decades of our reform and structural adjustment were all about unleashing economic activities through regulatory facilitation at home, then the focus of the current phase of globalization is rightly shifting towards promoting physical infrastructure connectivity beyond home. Regional connectivity in South Asia is today very much of relevance to the wider Indo-Pacific and to the world at large. And this is because physical connectivity is only a part of the larger web of trade and economic interaction, digital connectivity, people-to-people links, and knowledge connectivity that are the defining parameters of the Indo-Pacific region. We view the Indo-Pacific as a positive construct of development and connectivity in which we can play a unique role by virtue of our geographical location and economic gravity. And as Prime Minister outlined in his speech at this year's Shangri-La Dialogue, we believe in a free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific region, which includes all nations in this geography and others who have a stake in it. The shift in the fulcrum of global economic growth towards the Indo-Pacific is creating unprecedented opportunities for connectivity in the region. As my fellow speakers have pointed out, there is a huge infrastructure deficit which needs to be met to fulfill the growing aspirations of the peoples of this region. Of course, physical hardware of connectivity across countries can only sustain itself in a common and universally applicable rules-based world order. Such an order must uphold sovereignty, territorial integrity, and equality. All nations must respect their international commitments. This is a foremost requirement, and therefore a pressing need in our part of the world, the Indian Ocean, and any such arrangement must therefore naturally accord due primacy to the states located in the geography of the Indian Ocean. Secondly, connectivity can be meaningful only when everyone has equal access under international law to the use of the global commons. That would require freedom of navigation, unimpeded commerce, and peaceful settlement of disputes in accordance with international laws. Third, connectivity efforts in our region should be based on principles of economic viability and fiscal responsibility. They should promote economic activity, not place nations under irredeemable debt burdens. All connectivity initiatives should follow universally recognized international norms, rule of law, openness, transparency, equality, incorporation of ecological and environmental standards, and skill and transfer of technology, which would make connectivity and infrastructure sustainable in the long run. Fourth, connectivity initiatives that straddle national boundaries must be pursued in a manner that respects sovereignty and territorial integrity. They should promote trade, not tension. Government of India has been working to promote a number of initiatives and projects under this overall vision and are mindful of these principles. At home, our target is to build 40 kilometers of highways every day in 2018 and 19, a nearly 3-time jump from merely 4 years ago. By 2024, we are poised to emerge as the world's third largest aviation market. Our Sagarmala project involves building new ports and modernizing old ones. Targets in energy and digital connectivity also reflect the ambition to leapfrog in terms of connectivity and access. We are devoting more resources and assigning greater priority to building connectivity in our immediate neighborhood. In the past 15 years, India has extended lines of credit worth close to US $25 billion to more than 60 countries in our immediate neighborhood and in other parts of Asia and Africa. Our Act East policy is at the heart of our connectivity orientation and the fulcrum of our broader approach to the Indo-Pacific. Our efforts are focused on connecting the northeastern part of India with the dynamic economies of Southeast Asia and enhancing connectivity within the Northeast itself. Activities in Bangladesh are focused on inland water transport, building container depots, upgrading and building rail and road links, and reviving cross-border energy connectivity. Efforts in Myanmar include the Kaladan Multimodal Transit Project, the India-Myanmar-Thailand Trilateral Highway, and the Re-Tidim Road, which will open up new avenues for transport. We are engaged in a number of connectivity projects in Nepal, cross-border rail links, transmission lines, roads and bridges, and integrated checkposts have recently been completed. Work on a cross-border petroleum products pipeline from Motihari to Amlekganj in Nepal has begun. India's connectivity to our west, unfortunately, remains blighted. We have sought to bypass an unwilling government in Islamabad by establishing in June 2017 an air freight corridor between India and Afghanistan, which we plan to expand to more cities. We are also seeking to develop the Chabahar port as a gateway for onward connectivity to and from Afghanistan and Central Asia. Since last year, we have shipped about 110,000 metric tons of wheat and 2,000 metric tons of pulses through this port to Afghanistan. To tap its full potential for benefit of Afghanistan, we might also need to pursue the development of a railway line from Chabahar to Zahidan at some future time. There is also the potential for the development of the International North-South Transport Corridor, which will considerably reduce time and cost of transport between India and Central Asia. The Indian Ocean has a vital role to play as a connector of the littoral nations. Sri Lanka and the Maldives are the focus of our maritime connectivity efforts in this region. In Sri Lanka, India has extended substantial assistance, including nearly $1 billion towards the development of a railway network. The development of maritime and aviation infrastructure will also enhance connectivity between India and the island states of the Indo-Pacific. India and Indonesia are setting up a task force to promote connectivity between Sumatra and the Andaman Islands. And the best example of digital connectivity promoted by India are the newly launched New E-Vidya Bharati and E-Arogya Bharati networks in Africa that will provide quality teleeducation and telemedicine facilities by connecting selected Indian universities, institutions, and super specialty hospitals to African counterparts. Our efforts to build connectivity can only succeed in syncretic partnership with other countries, sharing the same purpose and the same objectives. And I'm happy to note a similar level of ambition, effort, and purpose by the United States and other countries and partners like Japan. Coordination of connectivity efforts in third countries forms an essential part of our trilateral cooperation with the United States and Japan. We see prospects for more impactful cooperation following the passage of the BUILD Act by the US Congress. Similarly, India and Japan are committed to working on the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor. As a member of many multilateral and regional groups, including ASEAN, BIMSTEC, Mekong-Ganga Cooperation, and SAARC, India has been promoting the connectivity agenda very actively and non-reciprocally in these groups. India is negotiating an agreement on maritime transport with ASEAN and exploring ways to link our connectivity initiatives with the ASEAN Master Plan on Connectivity. We have a vision to extend the trilateral highway to Cambodia and beyond. We are currently discussing a coastal shipping agreement and a motor vehicle agreement in the BIMSTEC format. Cooperation under the Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, and Nepal grouping is also being discussed in the areas of power and water resources management. In terms of financing beyond the World Bank, the ADB, and traditional sources, we welcome the role of new institutions such as the New Development Bank and the AIIB in promoting regional connectivity. As a founding member of these new institutions, India is playing a role to ensure that best practices learned from existing multilateral development institutions are practiced by these bodies. Beyond governments, the involvement of the private sector will be critical for financial and technical resources needed for massive infrastructure connectivity in the Indo-Pacific. The new US initiatives in this region, including promoting digital economy, energy, and infrastructure, and the passage of the BUILD Act, has cleared the way for the establishment of a new model of private-public partnership for connectivity. We wholeheartedly welcome it. We look forward to the opportunities to work with these institutions to promote shared connectivity objectives in the Indo-Pacific. To conclude, connectivity is not just a new byword for globalization. It is an urgent need for all growth-oriented economies. We understand that a lot more work is due to address the various practical aspects of connectivity and to guide the work and priority of governments, including our own. I hope that this conference will address some of those issues over the next 2 days and produce some out-of-the-box ideas which can supplement the tools already at our disposal. I wish the conference all success. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Gokhale sir. Your last sentence was the effective one, I would say. That is what we hope that, and that has been a tradition at CUTS, is to look at such events as a part of a program and to see as to how we can take forward action-oriented agenda rather than, as I said earlier. And I think the brilliant speeches made by all our dignitaries here have laid out the roadmap very clearly, and we'll be happy if you can get a copy of your speech to be distributed as well as uploaded on the website. And we'll produce a synthesis of these speeches in order to show us as to what should be the agenda. With that, may I request Mehta to please...
Thank you, Mr. Mehta, and thank you to all the distinguished dignitaries for their brilliant speeches. And I think it sets the tone very well for the conference, which is going to be starting after this. With that, I request my colleague Susan Matthews to bring up the research reports, which we're going to release, and hand it over to all the dignitaries. So these are the CUTS reports, which is Connecting Corridors Beyond Borders, which is going to be released right now. Thank you very much. And also would like to thank the US State Department for supporting the research reports. With that, would also request my colleague Debulina to come up and hand over the token of appreciation on behalf of CUTS to Mr. Mehta to pass it to all the dignitaries. So these are certificates which we are giving out to all the speakers today, which is basically marks a plantation of a tree in the name of the individual in East Sikkim in India. I request my colleague Susan to hand over the token of appreciation to Mr. Mehta. I think he's already done that. With that, thank you very much once again. We officially close the opening session, and I request all of you to join for tea at the Rani Bagh lawn, which is on your right once you exit this room. And would request all of you to be back in this room in next 10 minutes. I'm sure you can also bring your cup of coffee so that we can start the plenary one on time. Thank you once again very much, and thank you to all the dignitaries on the dais. Thank you.